The World Series of Pro Football sends Jimmy Brown and his Cleveland team against Johnny Unitas in Baltimore. Jimmy, let's have a wonderful hand here for Jimmy Brown. Why didn't you bring Sue on? You promised that Mrs. Brown would be along with you this time.
Well, I should have done that because this is always a great trip, but I was a little excited and I sort of forgot. But I know she's watching now, so I hope she enjoys the show.
I wonder if he had a habit of doing that, forgetting his wife, because when he was accused of throwing a longtime female companion off of his apartment balcony in Hollywood, California, his wife was at home with their children in Cleveland, Ohio, over 2,000 miles away. Jim Brown was a legendary fullback for the Cleveland Browns. When he died on May 18, 2023, he left his family, friends, and fans behind to mourn and celebrate his NFL and acting careers and his civil rights activism. Those things were his legacy.
Hef was such a gracious person, misunderstood because of the sexuality, the belief in free sex and the Playboy magazine, and very real about sex and sexuality. So, I was up to the mansion all the time. But I gave him the President's Award from the NAACP because 2 years in a row, his Bunny of the Year was African American. And I want to call attention to that because I don't know how in the heck you could have an African American be the Bunny of the Year 2 years in a row. So he was my recipient of the President's Award for fighting discrimination.
There's that outstanding activism. Thank you for fighting for the rights of Black women to be able to show our naked booties too. Power to the people, Jim. Again, these things were his legacy. But so is this, a long list of accusations of abuse of women that dates back to the 1960s. Spoiler alert, he never gets found guilty. Let's get into it. But first, if you like these videos about the most scandalous people from yesteryear who make Ty's hot mess history a time capsule for the culture, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can know every time that I upload one of these videos or every time that I live stream. And hit that like button to support this video. Thank you. Now, on to why you are here. In 1965, Jim Brown was accused of assault and battery against an 18-year-old named Brenda Ayers. She claimed that on June 19th of that year, he beat her at an East Side Cleveland motel. She said that he slapped her several times in her face and on her body and squeezed her arms and legs. She was treated for bruises at St. Luke's Hospital. Brown's only comment after being charged was, quote, "I am not that small that I have to beat up a girl," end quote. Brenda also accused Jim of multiple crimes of a sexual nature, but I will go into those details on Patreon as that content is not appropriate for YouTube. A number of the accusations against Jim Brown do involve forced sex coupled with violence. I will cover the assault and battery accusations in this video. Everything regarding his sex crime accusations, Playboy Mansion accusations, and his orgy parties, which he freely discussed, will be covered in my Patreon video. At the time of the Brenda Ayers accusations, when she was 18, Jim was 29. He always had a thing for much younger women, and you'll see that as time passed, the ages of his alleged victims were pretty low, 25 years and younger for the most part. And of course, Jim's age increased as time went on. And it was not by coincidence that he ended up with young women as sexual partners, whether those women were allowed the opportunity to give consent or not. Here's what he told Out of Bounds when he was 53 years old, quote, "Physically, between a young girl and an old one, there is no contest. I don't like being told what I'm supposed to want. For instance, I prefer girls who are young. My lady right now is 19, end quote. Two more charming quotes from him regarding the ages of women he wanted to screw. "When I eat a peach, I don't want it overripe. I want that peach when it's peaking." And he told Sports Illustrated, quote, "I mess with young women. I know it's bad, but I'm bad." End quote. Well, at least he was self-aware to an extent. But back to his list of accusations. In June of 1968, there's another young woman and another set of accusations. June again. This time it was June 9th. I don't know if you caught it, but the incident with Brenda Ayers was on June 19th. That's just an observation, but you'll see that 3 women accused him of assaulting them in June. The 1968 alleged victim's name is Ava Marie Bon Chen. At the time of the incident, she was 22 and Jim Brown was 32. This time the charge was assault with intent to murder. Ava was the daughter of a Jamaican diplomat and a German woman. She was a model who was taking advantage of the fact that the flavor of the moment was black women with a little something extra in the mix. Her agents described her as looking, quote, like a Negro with an Oriental strain. Well, by the time she was wheeled out of Jim's apartment complex, she wouldn't be top priority for any modeling agency because of how badly her face was beat. He was arrested on a Sunday after his neighbors reported that they heard a loud fight in his apartment in West Hollywood. By the way, the reported assault against Brenda also happened on a Sunday.
Jim thought on Sundays, and these are his words, that he was a god, that nobody could hurt him, nobody could touch him, nobody was better. And he proved it every Sunday.
Anyway, back to 1968 and Ava Marie. When police arrived at the scene, they found her unconscious and injured beneath his second-floor balcony. The doctors who treated Ava Marie said that she had cuts and bruises on her head, mouth, and cheeks, and a dislocated shoulder. The police officers reported finding blood stains on the wall, rug, bed, and a towel in the apartment. And a 5-inch patch of her hair was found on the floor, as well as other fragments of her hair that were found on the bed and floor. Always playing the role of the poor little black man, Jim didn't have an answer for why blood was all over his apartment, and there was a woman with a beat-up face and dislocated shoulder who appeared to have been thrown from his balcony. His only response was that the man was trying to bring him down because he was black. He said, quote, "You big white cops in your goddamn system, everything is against the Negroes. In order to get in, you're going to have to shoot me first." End quote. During the investigation of that crime scene, Jim Brown struck a second victim, one of the officers who responded to the call, John Texeria. He weighed in at 165 pounds compared to Jim's 228 pounds. When John attempted to enter the apartment, Jim, quote, knocked him 7 feet with the swing of his left arm, earning a battery against a police officer charge, which was a felony. Jim's attorney, of course, did what he was hired to do and said that Jim Brown was completely innocent and in no way injured Ava. But no one had an explanation for how she was beaten so badly or how blood happened to appear all over Jim's apartment. By the way, at this time in his life, while Jim was entertaining women in his Hollywood apartment, he was married with kids. Some sources say 2 kids. When the Sacramento Bee reported on this story on June 11, 1968, it was written that he had 3 kids who were all living with his wife in Cleveland. After she had time to heal from the incident, her modeling asking price soared because of the publicity she gained from that day. In the entertainment industry, she went from being called Ava China, the name that she was using to play up that exotic persona, to being called Jim's Girl. She didn't like being called Jim's Girl. She went on to tell Jet magazine the following year, in 1969, that she fell on her own when Jim went to open the door for the police. Even she never explained all of the blood in his apartment and the cuts on her face and her missing hair. Well, 30 years later, it seemed that Ava Marie realized that she sold her soul for chump change. Yeah, her modeling price soared for a moment, Then nobody cared about her when she got older, as is the case for most models. But when she sat down to be interviewed in Spike Lee's documentary, Jim Brown, All-American, while she pointed at the cuts that were still on her body, she angrily said, quote, "He pushed me. He slammed me. I was young, good-looking, a person who loved life. Why would I jump?" End quote.
You go to certain lengths in this film to show that the old story about him and the woman being tossed out the second floor, I guess it was,
Eva Bon Chen,
didn't happen the way it was assumed at the time.
No, that's not true, Charlie. What we do is, number one, there are only two
What's
people.
not true?
What you just said.
You're saying it didn't happen the way...
No, here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
The only two people in the room were Jim Brown and Eva Bon Chen. Jim has his story. It took us 4 or 5 months to track this lady down. We found her in Munich, Germany, sent a crew there, filmed her. So we cut back and forth her version of what happened and his version. And we leave it up to the audience to decide
what do you think happened?
It looks bad. She says he came towards her, and next thing she knew, she was in the hospital. Jim says she was trying to help him out so the cops wouldn't, when the cops were coming in, so she was trying to climb down the balcony and fell.
Come on.
Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good.
You think she was thrown out?
It looks that way. It looks that way.
Yeah.
Now, one crime that he was found guilty of and penalized for was connected to Eva Marie Bon Chen. Crybaby, race-baiting shenanigans aside, Jim Brown would never pay for any of his crimes against women. It was his assault of the police officer who responded to Eva Marie's crime scene for which Jim would ultimately pay a whopping $300 fine after he entered a plea of no contest. The judge gave him a choice of either 60 days in jail or paying the fine. And apparently on that day, America's judicial system wasn't racist, according to the revered civil rights activist. His quote in the Portland Press was, "I'm glad this is all over. I think the judge did what he felt was right. We must have faith in our judges. Our judicial system is the greatest in the world." What a change of heart. He was also found to be at fault for one more crime related to a woman, but it wasn't for a crime against a woman. It was for a crime committed against a car, the vandalism of his wife's car in 1999.
I should make this point. Originally, Jim Brown was going to be with us.
Yes.
He can't be with us because he's
in the Huskow.
He's in the Huskow.
Ventura County Jail, I think it is.
Jail.
Right.
Yeah, he's serving 6 months.
Right.
Because he refused to undergo counseling.
And
he refused to what?
Pick up garbage on the highway.
Make good work or something.
Well, the judge felt that the best way to utilize Jim Brown's resources is to pick up garbage on the highway. And Jim is a very proud person, and he felt to be dehumanizing to do that. So he said, "I'm not doing that, and I'd rather
take the time."
So he's taking 6 months.
That doesn't surprise you at all, does it?
It does not. It's consistent with his character. The reason why he's in jail, which we have the end of the film, his new wife, Monique, they had a fight.
Yeah.
And he took a shovel to her car and broke the windshield.
Now, why would he do that?
He was mad.
But we'll get to that in part 2. As well as the one charge that a woman brought against him that I believe was likely false. Also, we'll talk about Jim Brown's rather ironic comment about O.J. Simpson.
Tell me about the Playboy Mansion. Are you always at the Playboy Mansion? A lot of the time at the Playboy Mansion?
Yes, I'm there a lot of the time.
Now, I've never been there.
Well, first of all, let me tell you about the Playboy Mansion. Hugh Hefner is a tremendous man. He's an innovator.
Oh, yeah, but get to the good stuff.
Yeah, well, the girl, right. The jacuzzi, you cannot lock the door. There's always a lot of beautiful girls. There's always a lot of celebrities. There's a lot of birds and animals. And there's a tennis court and a playroom. And we have access 24 hours a day. Unbelievable.
But is it
Is it like you think it is?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be.
But I mean, has it been? Have you ever gone home from that place saying to yourself, "Oh my God"?
Yes.
And we'll get into that on Patreon. There's another man who has a history of abusing women who practically shares Jim Brown's name, James Brown. He was said to have been very abusive to Tammy Terrell when she was only 17, before she became the big name in Motown as Marvin Gaye's singing partner. I published a video about that story that you can see here. I will also leave a link to it in the description box. I will list all of my sources on part 2 of this video. This video has been brought to you by me. Well, my Patreon is a sponsor for this video. If you like these dirty scandals on my channel, then you'll love my Patreon, Ty's Too Hot Hot Mess History. It has all of the stuff that I can't talk about or show here because it's just too hot, too violent, too sexual, too graphic, too much. Come and join us there for the hot Hot Mess History. The link is in the description box.